to In the Zone, brought to you by U.S. Construction Zone, bringing you strategies for success with construction innovators and change makers, including In the Zone peer-nominated national award winners. Here are your hosts, Jeremy and Valerie Owens.
Hello, and welcome to our podcast.
She still doesn't know what it's called. It's called In the Zone. We'll get there. She'll remember. We didn't do any coaching before we started, so thank you for listening and welcome in again. We have a great guest coming up. We wanted to just start with a little bit of in the news, so Val, take it away.
Yeah, so an article that I read recently was regarding Lennar Homes, and they had done an interview, and they're the second
biggest builder.
Yeah, biggest builder right now.
Yep.
In the nation. And so they've been having trouble. You know, we've talked about labor shortages a lot. And one of the things that they have experienced and you have experienced, and I know construction companies all over the nation have, is supply chain issues. Mm-hmm. And we touched on it briefly on our last podcast. But so I wanted to kind of talk about the Lennar issue and what they're finding, in that it's somewhat of this traffic jam because you have so many components and variables that are causing just this breakdown in the chain of building in the construction industry. So how has that affected you? What are you seeing?
Yeah.
What's your take on this?
It's a little scary. I mean, as you guys know, I'm the third generation in remodeling, and our roots start in the 1950s. And I was talking to my dad about it the other day, and he's never seen a labor and supply thing in tandem like this. And both of them are the worst that they've ever been. Mm-hmm. So you create two things that we need in building, materials and labor, and make them both hard to get. It makes life a little difficult. And I think what Lennar was getting at is that their growth is now stunted, where, maybe a year ago they were like, oh my gosh, demand's great. They're selling homes. They were breaking records. Those are all great, but they're having a hard time finishing a home because you'll be missing one component, or, a window here, or a sink over here. And so like everything feels unfinished, and then it's just a scramble of trying to get things completed. Mm-hmm. But there are things that for us, like we have I won't name the manufacturer, we have a window brand right now that is 4 months out.
Right.
4 months for a homeowner is like, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
So, and that's not uncommon in other types of components in a house. So 4 months lead time, and there's nothing you could do. Can't rush it. You can't get one faster than the other. Everything starts at the same starting point. So
I think
4 months.
Seen on a small scale too is that it causes almost a distrust in the industry, and a sort of this competitiveness of, that company said they couldn't get it for 4 months. Well, I can get it in a shorter time. In reality, they can't, and we know that, but it's creating this level of competition of, almost where the homeowners aren't being told the truth. They don't know what's really going on.
Yeah, I think it's just hard to believe because it's just no one's used to this.
Wrong.
So unless you're in the industry, they're like, you liar, or that can't be true. And so sometimes you have to send them evidence, and you go to Google and they'll see what's happening. And one of the recent things in California is in Long Beach, they have, which is the biggest port in California, they broke a record with 56 cargo ships stuck in the harbor waiting to offload. And they can't get a couple things. They can't get labor to offload it. They have COVID protocols. And there's also a huge demand. And a lot of people are putting in giant orders now because they're afraid of the supply chain issue come Christmas time. So all of these orders are coming through. No one can get them to where they need to go. And so there's a huge delay. And you were just saying you were at the grocery store the other day, and there was some kind of empty shelves again. And we're like, uh-oh, here we go again. Hopefully it's not toilet paper, but it's just like causing all these bottlenecks everywhere. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I can tell you that industry experts are looking at next year somewhere mid-year. But again, that's still hopeful for them, but they don't see it being fixed anytime soon. So we could be looking at a whole year of this.
Right. It just causes instability, and
it does. And for us, it is stunting our growth. It is cutting into our profits. When you have to go back to almost every home because we have to install something else that was missing or back ordered, that's all time. And, we don't want to use our precious labor to go back to a home, but that's what we're having to do. So dang it, we're frustrated, but I think today's guest is great because he will get into the leadership part of our industry and just how important, being a great leader and being invested in your team and yourself in creating the best team and the best environment can actually help solve some of these things, whether that be a supply or labor or whatever. So we're really happy to now get into our next guest. All right. Thanks again for joining In the Zone. And today we have a special guest, and I want to introduce him. He has completed over 400 projects in the commercial, retail, restaurant, and office scope. Sunny owns and operates all aspects of award-winning Pinhero Construction, Inc., tapping into decades of experience and partnerships. Sunny's passions for building has connected him with biggest names in construction, and he has led his team to 117% growth and ranking him number 145 on the Inc. 5000 list. Congratulations on that. A jack of all trades, he regularly extends his knowledge to consulting management, business coaching, and networking. And honestly, my favorite part about Sunny is his willingness to help a fellow contractor. Please help me welcome Sunny Pinhero.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for being on here. I know this isn't your first podcast rodeo, so we appreciate you. Your time is valuable, I know. So every 30 minutes is important, so we appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Anything I can do to help.
Cool. Thanks. So I kind of wanted to start. We chatted a little bit a few weeks ago about your start in construction. I'm the third generation in remodeling, and it sounds like you're a second generation. So tell me a little bit about your start in construction.
Yeah, so I'm not technically second generation from the standpoint of like it's the same company that rolled over. My dad was a drywall framing contractor in Southern California here in San Diego for a long time. When I was 12 years old, I was out there hanging rock with him, doing lids, holding up the other side of the sheet or scrapping houses. I still have memories of like throwing scraps of drywall out the window of a second story building out here in Escondido or Temecula, out into the dumpster. And I thought that was really cool, but that's kind of like where it started. And then, when we had moved up to Seattle, up to the Pacific Northwest, my dad had an opportunity to become a superintendent for a general contractor. He eventually went out on his own and kind of had his own little, construction business where he ran the field, my mom ran the office, and that's kind of how I got into it. So, yeah, just
nice. So, did your dad it sounds like he had some work ethic because you've always had that all the way along. Did he kind of teach you that as well?
Yeah, I think it's ingrained in us though, like my level of work ethic is not necessarily the same as his. He hustled on job sites. Like, I don't think I've ever worked with another actual person on a job site when I used to do it more.
Right.
They hustle more, just get down to business.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that there's, some of that rubs off on you if you see your dad waking up, doing anything and everything, going to work and then coming home and working on a truck or working on a house or something like it, at some point in time, that's just sort of expectations, right?
Yeah. No, that's.
Yeah. Was there any other industry that you ever pulled towards, or were you always focused on more construction?
Well, so I got my start in like a general job, like when I first got going in the grocery industry. So, I was a helper clerk, promoted to produce, and then over to checker, and then I actually started doing management through a grocery store, through college, and that actually paid my way to buy my first house, buy my first truck, so I had sort of going that route, but it was just something that like I needed more. I wanted to do something myself, and so I called my dad up one day and said, "Hey, can I just come to work for you?"
Nice.
Yeah. It's so funny. We have so many similarities. I did the same thing. I worked at a grocery store in college, and it just kind of supported me. I didn't have any debt in college, so But after that, I got a couple jobs, and then I was like, hey, what am I doing? And then I just went right back to the family thing. So
Yeah.
it's funny. We
Well,
have a lot of similarities.
the grocery store is pretty cool because you get to feel the work ethic, you get to hustle a little bit, especially if it like the quality food centers I worked at, we faced everything all the time.
Yeah.
It was, we didn't put any produce out that had, bruises on it, things like that. So there was a certain level that helped me with my customer service that I got from that industry. Just like people might get customer service from being like a server at a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Like those are really good people to bring into the industry if you want to bring someone in that has good customer service, that has good work ethic, because they're always walking fast back and forth to the kitchen.
Right.
Some of the things kind of tie into, as contractors, we're going to be looking for people outside the industry to bring in eventually.
Yeah.
So,
Funny. I had grocery store. She had restaurant.
But I agree. I think that there's so much value in going outside of what you eventually end up in.
right.
Because it does it. We try to tell our kids, at least with college as well, learn everything, learn a broad range, because you never know what it is that's going to eventually stick, knowing that every single place you end up with along the path is going to teach you something about business.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a conversation with my daughter yesterday. She wants to do art. And so we agreed that she would get a degree in business at least and still get like an art minor or something to start out with so she can do that. So she has something to fall back on, I guess. So
Right.
Yeah. What about like graphic design or like artsy, techie? Because one of our daughters is the same way. She's like, an artist, and she's trying to figure out what she wants to do. And we're like, well, what about the tech side of art? Like, just trying to kind of keep some option, a little bit more options available to her.
it's interesting. I have two daughters, and trying to get them interested in construction was hard. So I was trying to push the architecture side of it,
Yeah.
but but that hasn't stuck completely. So, but she's a freshman in high school, so we'll give it some years and see. I didn't know what I wanted to do until, really know what I want to do until after I was, in college. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going from your your childhood into your grocery store, the grocery store industry, and learning the customer service, you've now grown to where your companies are being ranked in the Inc. 5000, and very well. What do you attribute to that success or to that rapid growth?
I think it's just approaching business with ethics and standards, and doing it like more as a partner with your clients. And so, I was pretty lucky I built a couple different companies, had some failures for sure, but Pinhero Construction, we started in 2015. I hooked up with some clients. We treated it really like open book with our clients. They really just, we told them, hey, you focus on operations, marketing, getting things going, and we're just going to hand you the keys when we're done. And we really try to provide a really simplified service for them. And, then that just kind of snowballed because they loved working with us. We took care of what they needed. And at the end of the day, a lot of these entrepreneurs in the commercial space, which is essentially who we're doing work for, we're doing work for other business owners, not like a homeowner. It's a little bit different than the residential side, but
Right.
I think the same thing applies is if you just take care of things for people, then they're going to want to keep hiring you. And if you're good to work with, which I find that we've kind of taken a more progressive approach to things with like softwares and customer service, and, versus, some of my mentors outside of even my dad, they're old school, a little grumpier, gruff, type of guy. They don't want to do a project, or they, want to do something specific, or they're, always worried about getting paid or something. Like that wasn't the way we approached everything. So we got lucky with a couple clients that had multiple stores that they were doing. We provided, we earned the service every single time. So if we did one project, we earned the next one through that process, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh man, yes.
Yeah. So, and then everything I did was I would hire a person when I could, because the only thing in business that matters is your employees. getting customers, finding customers is actually the easy side of things. It's being able to have the capacity to do it. And the capacity is either in equipment, tools, or employees. And so I've always been of the mindset to build a team. And as we built the team, our capacity's grown. And surprisingly, so did the revenue, and so did the people that wanted to have us do stuff kind of grew within that as well.
Yeah, it's funny. It's just, it seems so simple. Do the right thing and then expect good results. But it's really true. I mean, you could, again, talking about any sector of life, do the right thing for other people, for your boss, for your company, and good things will come back to you. So, I mean, it seems simple, but so many contractors, like you said, they struggle with, I think, the pride aspect of the industry, where you take a lot of pride in what you do, but then if someone has a problem with it, you immediately get upset instead of like, hey, sell through it. Like, let's just figure it out. Let's fix it. But I think that's the part that I see most contractors, fail at, is like getting upset real early in the process instead of just selling through it. But you mentioned, go ahead.
Well,
you mentioned, sorry, this is a podcast live. You mentioned a couple failures along the way. What did you learn for those first couple businesses? Is this your third go round or second go round, or where are you at in the process?
Well, this is the second of like an official business, right? Okay. So I've always loved business, so I've always done a couple other things outside of just construction. But yeah, my first construction company I started when I was 25. My parents ended up getting a divorce at the time, and since my dad ran the field, my mom ran the office, and neither of them can do the other person's role. They couldn't really succeed in a business, and it's definitely difficult. I just kind of took what I learned from both of them, and that's what I went out on my own with, right? So I went out on my own, started my first company. This was like 2008, 2009. And when we didn't get paid for a couple projects that we had, under construction, it was brutal, and I didn't anticipate it, didn't know what was coming down the pike. But what I learned through that is that there's an amazing amount of grit and fortitude that you can overcome a lot of things. And so, that was part of it. But the other part was, getting things actually in order, like trying to be a real business person. Before I owned a company and I was a contractor, but I wasn't a real business person. So, getting a lawyer with your contracts, learning lien laws, understanding mechanic right liens. And here in California, luckily, those sort of things do support you as a contractor, where I was at previously didn't as well. But, CPA, knowing your numbers, knowing if you're making money, saving money or hiring employees versus going out and buying, brand new truck and lift it with 35s if you're a new contractor, right? You're obviously making, you're making money pretty quickly, when you go from being an electrician to owning your electrical business. But if you save up, you have your 6 months in savings, whatever your risk parameters are, like that's what you have to decide on. But those are all the things that I learned how to strategically do. So when I started this company, it's like, okay, I didn't do that the first time. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this next time, right?
Right. It's such a learning experience. And we talked about it before that a lot of contractors don't have the business sense, just because you kind of fall into the business as opposed to other industries where you really have to have the business sense. But a lot of us just like, you fall into I'm an owner now because I don't want to work for somebody else. And then 10 years go by and you've made every single mistake in the book. And sometimes it takes a failure in order for you to learn it. Sometimes it's a mentor that says, hey, know your numbers or what that thing may be. But you hear it a lot with contractors that, hey, I'm just now learning to be a businessman and I'm 10 years in. That's pretty common. So
yeah, I mean, I just got back from Denver, where that was a Tom Reber's Mile High Profit Summit was at, and the whole point of that is for contractors to go. And these are contractors that are still trying to make just $100,000 a year by themselves,
right?
And so, there are places out there, you're putting together a program to attract people to start working on their businesses. You're third generation. So you've seen like what it's like working in the business and then struggling on the business. And now you're taking all that, what you've learned from previous, putting that together. And so I think guys like you and me have a little bit of a leg up because we have a little bit of history that we've watched.
Yes.
But, it's definitely challenging because there's two different things you have to do. work on the business and then operate the business. Actually go do the construction work while you're still trying to figure out how to make it all work on the back end. So.
Yeah, I was telling Valerie that I'm super jealous of you because you have a lot more systems in place in your business where, you've delegated well, and I have not. I'm terrible at it. So I still have my hands in too many aspects. So it's difficult for me because it's hard for me to go to the conferences. When I'm away on vacation, I'm still kind of plugged in. And so I'm getting there, but that's some of the advice I need from others is like, hey, how have you gone about creating those systems to replace you? Like I need to replace myself and I'm not close. And it's kind of a scary feeling because I got a ways to go to get to kind of where you're at, where you're feeling a little bit more comfortable with your team that they can support you.
Yeah, I think I ended up getting one call last week when I was out of town, and that was just basically because we're negotiating contract on a pretty large project. But what it took to do that was it took me to sacrifice the first few years to hire the right people. And then you also have to trust in them, right? I had 2 calls earlier this week with contractors that were calling me and saying, hey, like I can't find anyone. There's no one to hire. And I asked them a couple questions like, if there's another company in town compared to you, like let's call it Best Plumbing versus your plumbing company, where would employees want to go to work at? One of the guys actually said that they'd rather go work at Best Plumbing. I'm like, well, that's not the mindset to have if you're trying to attract employees, right? Like you got to be the best place to work for. And the other thing is that there's 25 other plumbing companies in your area that all have employees. Like there's someone you can hire to do the work, right? So you have to have it starts with the mind shift, the mindset, like shifting that to where it's like, okay, well, I can build a place that people want to come. I am going to be the boss and leader that people want to work with, right? But for me, don't get me wrong, like through my first 10, 15 years in business, I try to do everything. I was trying to be complete control, but that's called a bottleneck. That is you getting in your way. So, and there's I don't know if you're familiar with Jocko, but he's got a book, Leadership, Ethics and Strategies that I'm reading right now. And he outlines it really well. The whole philosophy that I basically took from that book, the main one is that your team can come to you with a 70% solution and they're going to outperform with that solution than if you gave them an 80% and made them do it. Because it was their idea and they're going to do a better job at that. So I really depend on the team to come up with solutions when we need them. I let them figure it out, and I know that there's going to be times where they fail, but I try to sort of guide them into, okay, did you think of this or tweak it just a little bit? So I know that they can have a little bit more success, but you have to be able to give up that control. But to give up the control, you have to have leverage. And leverage means you have to have, money in the bank so that you can make a mistake. You have to have plenty of people applying at your business so that you can feel comfortable either letting someone go that's not the right fit, or maybe turning down some work that's going to be potentially bad work for you that's going to cause you problems. But you have to have enough work advertised to come in to be able to turn that down. So those are all things that are leverage. And that's my thing is like, I didn't need to take a lot of money from the company, so I could go hire people. I could put some money in the bank. And that kind of gave me leverage versus the first go around in my 20s, I had to lift a truck. I had the nice house. I had all the toys, but I had to make a certain amount, a nut to be able to cover that. Yeah. And I didn't have the leverage to go do what I needed to do. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. I never thought of it like that as leverage, but all of those aspects, I mean, we're learning about turning down work, and what that looks like is huge because you get stuck in a project where, maybe you're losing money or maybe you're breaking even, but you're not replacing it with all those valuable jobs that you could be profitable in. So we're learning that. I think a lot of people, because of how busy contractors are now have that leverage to say, you know what, we're not a good fit. That's what we're seeing a lot. But I had a question because I think it might have been on your Instagram where you said this. You said the difference between good and great is in the effort of execution. So I wanted to, I was curious what you meant by that, because it is kind of what we were talking about just now, but it's pretty profound.
Yeah, and I don't know if I necessarily try to be too profound on that. It's just, pointing out that it only takes a couple percent, or it only takes a little bit of effort to do something to get you into that great, or to be that amazing company, or to be better, right? And let's simplify it. Let's say that you hire an electrician to come in and put an outlet in your house. They show up on time, they communicate with you, they're nice, they give you a decent price, they do the work, you pay them, they take off. Well, the next day you're doing some stuff, and then you go check on the outlet, and there's a pile of drywall dust going down the base and the floor, and the screw's a little bit crooked, and the outlet's just a little bit off. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yeah. you had 90% there. All it took was 5% extra to be like the best. Right. He literally would have been my favorite electrician, but I won't call him back again because he just didn't do the 3 or 4% or 5% extra effort to get that to make that look good. And I know it's a really simple solution, but that's the same way it is in all of business. Taking your proposals and making them look good. It's just a little bit of extra work to like make sure your logo's clean, make sure you have enough information on there for a client. Just little things like that can go a long way. Having your voicemail set up, or those are just all the little things that we've done as a company that I think make us stand out. Actually, matter of fact, we just won a $5 million project because I had employees on our qualification call that actually provided input. I let them talk about different things that they'd be doing, and we were all branded with our Pinhero shirts on. And I'm wearing my Arate one today, but all of them looked the part. And we were competing with another company who wasn't. They were just, they didn't look those parts. And those are just little things that I think make the difference from going from good to great. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot of time. I mean, you think about that electrician example, like, what are we talking? 5 more minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just, but it shows you a lot about that individual that they didn't want to see it through. So yeah, it's great insight.
Yeah, I think details are so important, and you never know who you're selling to either. So, you want to make sure that you're touching on every single different type of person.
Yeah. In 2012, I went to work with a friend of mine. He wanted to become a general contractor, but he had an electrical and HVAC company, and he was getting into this thing called solar, and I thought that was super cool. So I was like, listen, let me just take over your solar division. I'll run it, check it out. But what's really cool is the details, and sort of along what we're talking about is his HVAC side business had a $95 call one day, just to come out and look at a mobile home heater. So the service tech went out, and there was a problem with it. So Anthony had to go out himself just to look at it to make sure it was done right. It was like just some weird heater. I don't know. Maybe the part was hard to figure out. But it was a mobile home in a 55 and older community.
Yeah.
Anthony goes out, he repairs it. It was $85-$95. And then it was a little old lady who was there. And about a week later, he gets this call. And this lady calls him up and says, "Hey, I'm the GM of Lexus. Wow. And you worked on my parents' mobile home to help their heater, and they said you did an awesome job. Can you come to the dealership and do some work for me?" So that $95 call turned into a $1 million solar project that we did in Riverside in, I don't know, it's about 6 years ago now. But my point is that little call, you don't know who you're selling to.
Right.
Little call can turn into a big project.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just something that we talk about a lot, is that a service call turned into a really big solar project. And it could have easily went the other way. It's like, right. Oh, we can figure this out. We're going to leave it. We're going to move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not worth their time, or you never know who you're selling to. I know there's a saying about how, every day is an interview, or something to that effect. You walk through your days as if it's an interview. And it's true. If you're putting your best foot forward and showing everybody what you're capable of, and
You never know what it's going to turn into.
Yeah.
It's everything that we talked about. It's like the little things. Every single time we're talking about little
Always
things,
little things.
you know.
Well, I was thinking, and I don't.
That's what most people aren't doing. They're not doing the little things.
Yeah.
So if you start doing the little things,
Right.
foodies walking into a house,
Yes.
you're not wearing sunglasses when you're talking to the customer, just those are all things that someone else is not going to do because they're lazy or not disciplined.
Right.
And that's that 5% difference, I think.
And it's also, too, what you were talking about with your company, how you were on the call and you had everybody there and they were offering their input. It shows the advantage of having a team and working as a team because I don't, when Jeremy and I have people come into our house to do repairs or, whatever it may be, I'm always looking at something.
I hate all the repairs you do. So
of course. No, I look at things very differently than Jeremy does. And so I think, too, being able to offer your customers the ability to have multiple eyes and different perspectives looking at a project is so important that you don't. Old school was very individualized. I feel like a lot of our parents' companies, and that's why they lasted for as long as our parents did. Yeah. And then it ended when they retired. Yep. But the beauty of, I think, what you guys are building and what I hope this generation creates is that the legacy comes from laying the foundation. And then from there, you have these brilliant minds that can add to it, because we're all given different gifts, I'm detail, you're not.
yes, that is true.
So one of the things that I think is really cool about your company is one of the, I was going through all the pictures and I saw the Rodeo 39 food hall and just this incredible, beautiful building. You have so many different styles out there. Where does that come from? Do you have like a team that is just a fun team or what? Tell me more about that.
Well,
what kind of work excites you?
Yeah. So I put out there on my Instagram a while ago that says that I want to do cool projects with awesome people. And what's interesting about putting things out in the world is that they actually come back. And you get kind of what you focus on. So we've been lucky enough to work on some cool projects like Rodeo 39. Unfortunately, I can't say that the design or the artistic side is from us. We certainly can build it, but that's the architects and designers that we've developed relationships with. So sometimes they contract through us, sometimes that we're working with them. Rodeo 39 was with a partner, an architect partner, Ad Collaborative out of Orange County, and they've been doing projects for a long time. And we just developed nice relationships. So we just take those visions and we build it. And in the commercial industry, there's not as much opportunity for us to do designs like you can in residential. So I appreciate the sentiment. It does look awesome. We're proud of it, but we definitely were not the ones who came up with the design, for that. But, and then when it comes to the team, I think the team really matches the leaders. And so it's however you are and how you show up every day is kind of how your team's going to be. So surprisingly, most of the people here are probably, more on the level-headed professional side, just, kind of not necessarily easygoing, but there's definitely a theme and a culture that we've built here, through our core values. So
yeah, so you're not going to start screaming right now. Someone comes in the door.
Yeah, and that's what contractors are doing. If they're the ones who are always yelling at their employees, and their employees are going to yell at someone else, or it's going to happen on the job site when they're not around, and it's just and that's the same thing with our family or kids or whatever. You have to work through that. And trust me, I've had to work on it a little bit, as I've developed my leadership. So. Yeah,
me as well. Speaking of leadership, my next question was about, you've been a part of a lot of leadership groups. I mean, you're wearing an Arate shirt right there, networking groups, leadership groups, teams. Where does that come from? And I guess what, you may be seeing U.S. Construction Zone as something to look at as well, is that where did that come from and why do you think it's important for you?
You can't go to school for this stuff. You don't learn that, you don't learn this unless maybe your parents were business owner. But even my parents as a business owner growing up in the 80s, they were just business owners. They didn't think of it as like entrepreneurship, like they can change the world. And it's a lot more important to be a business owner than maybe it has been in the past, I believe. Or at least we're looking at in a way that we can be more important, right? By doing these things, because it impacts a lot of people. I mean, you can have employees own houses and build their dream within your dream. And so, one of my visions is to create a place where my vision's big enough to where other people's visions fit into. And that's the only way to keep, people long term in your company who believe in where we're going and what we're working towards, right? And so, but to be able to do that, you have to be good at leadership. And I haven't been good at leadership for most of my life. I don't know where to get that at. I don't know where to find that necessarily. I mean, you can read books, right? But being an entrepreneur or a contractor, it's kind of lonely at the top. Like, you got some contractor buddies you hang out with, but do you really want to talk business while you're out buying or, going out on your boat, some curves or something, So
right.
It's a structured place where I can go and find peers, because when I failed my first business, it sucked. Like, it took a lot out of me for a couple of years, and I didn't want that to happen. So I want to learn what other people do and how they navigate, these things. And the only place to find that is getting yourself in front of someone, right? And so you either do that through U.S. Construction Zone or, just other groups like the meeting I just went to over the last week in Denver. It's a structured way to get peers and mentorship.
Yeah, no, totally agree. You're speaking my language, man.
Yeah. When you, having now created a successful business, what do you think of when you think of what legacy that you'll be leaving with it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I've created enough to make a legacy yet. And so that's why I keep working, right? And that's why I'm going to keep building it. So, one of my goals is to get to $100 million in revenue, and that should be we should be able to do it on the commercial side pretty easily, much easier than maybe like a residential contractor could, just because of the size of projects we work on. But I've been talking with a CEO of a company out of Chicago that actually was bought out by an employee-owned company, and so part of what I'm trying to make my legacy is converting Pinhero Construction to an employee-owned company at a certain point in time when we get to the size we can. And I think that's kind of where I can build a legacy, is where I actually have like other people on my team who benefit from stock options or retirement, or can go buy houses, or their kids. Like, we can create generational changes,
right?
Through that process. And that's a lot to think on, or it's a lot to take on, from that standpoint. But that's essentially what I'm trying to do is my ultimate goal. So, do my girls, will they ever take over a company? Probably not. They're going to do their own things, but I definitely want to set them up to give them the best option they can get in life. So, we've invested in charter schools and, things like that for them. But, from a legacy standpoint, hopefully Pinhero rolls on as an employee-owned company, and, either that or becomes part of a bigger conglomerate where, as many people as it can impact can.
I love what you were saying about that, because I think it's true. A lot of people, when they're building a business, they're not necessarily thinking, really long term of what is this going to eventually become. But I just wanted to remind you both. You were talking earlier about your daughters and how, ours is very artistic as well. And it doesn't always mean that we want to take their
passions away.
Well, that passion, and kind of turn it into something where we say there's a monetary gain.
Right.
We want to do that as parents because we want to make sure that they're successful in their future. But it just reminds me of what you both were saying earlier on, in that you watched your dads. You've talked about that several times, and you said that today. You were on the throwing drywall off the roof and that type of thing. The experiences that we have with people like you as fathers is more lasting and impressionable, I think, than we necessarily give yourselves credit for, in that your legacy is being built as you move through your business, because the next generation is watching. And whether that's our children or whether it's your younger employees, I think you're building something really incredible, even as we speak.
I'm not crying. I just
yeah. So and I'm just really impressed with your perspective. I think it's been fantastic to hear about, Sunny.
Well, I think if we go into business just to try to make money, that's you're gonna just be chasing that, and that's something you'll never get. But if you start making change and impact and serving, then you will definitely succeed, and you'll succeed much greater than you ever thought you could. So, that's basically the whole different thought process from where I was 28 versus 42, and the difference in the companies, right? Not that it's not challenging or hard, or sometimes I want to throw in the red, the flag, but certainly gives me more purpose to wake up in the day and know that I have 26 people and their families depending on me, not only my own. But so trying to design that and think about how to make it sustainable and scalable is definitely challenging, but it's doable.
Yeah,
I agree. Gets me out of the bed every morning. So cool.
All right, we want to jump into.
Yeah, thanks a lot for being here, Sunny. We want to kind of end it with our last three questions. We call our zone out questions. And
awesome.
So the first question is, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I don't know. I mean, it could have been, like a firefighter or president or something like that. I remember doing drawing, and I really liked designing like cars as a kid. And I actually took AutoCAD in high school, and there's two things I designed. I designed wheels in AutoCAD in 3D, which was pretty cool. And then I designed a 10,000 square foot house. So, it was either I was going to go in automotive or I was going to go construction, right? Yeah. So, I think when I got serious about it, I really wanted to be an architect, but I did really terrible in math in college. And that's when I gave up and became a contractor. So
that's an honest answer.
I love that.
Yeah, it is.
So pretend you have your own late night talk show. Who would you want to be your first guest? Alive or passed on? Either way.
Oh, just a talk show, like for construction or just like in general?
In general.
Picture your Conan.
Yeah.
What's that?
Picture your Conan O'Brien, and you're bringing somebody on as a guest.
Oh, someone like Carnegie or Ford. People who are like developing businesses at that point in time. I mean, over the course of history, there's always been merchants, right? That's always been trade. There's always been some level of capitalism in some sort of sense, right? Like I'm trading you goats for corn or whatever, right?
Right.
But once it kind of became production based, it was, and these people came out of nowhere with nothing and developed these things in a new industry. And that would be really cool to talk about. So I don't know if that's a boring answer, an exciting one, but like someone like that would be really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool. Right on. And the last one is, who was the most influential person in your life?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it's probably a split between my dad and mom, to be honest with you, because my dad had the work ethic and taught me everything about construction. When I started, that's what I did. And then my mom taught me how to do some business stuff, with the books and the accounting, side of things. We haven't necessarily had the greatest relationship. But I don't know if anyone else had any bigger of an impact on what I did,
right.
Outside of just being part of what they did. Like my mom was running permits for one of the pool companies down here when she was in her 30s. And I remember as a kid running around the building apartments, like if I can't say that it didn't affect me running around the building apartments now, I don't know what would.
Right.
But if there's anything that helped with mindset to kind of take it from their level and move it on, it would be reading the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. So,
Oh yes, we know it well.
Yeah, I had a client give that to me when I was like 24, 25, and that whole thought process just completely changed. In my mind is like, okay, what can I accomplish by doing this?
Right.
And although that book in general sort of elementary a little bit. It's kind of like an entry level book for like entrepreneurs or investing and things like that. Just the thought process of, thinking about, getting a job or owning a business and what you can accomplish with both, So
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, we read that book too when we were younger, and it made me think like, I don't think I can ever go back and work for somebody, because once you get started, you're like, even if I blow this thing up, I'm going to go start something else. Like, it's just a mentality that you're like, I'll just keep going. It's like a grind.
mentality, sickness, I don't know what it is, but
Yes, exactly. Well,
No.
Sunny, I appreciate your time. This has been great. We got a lot of insight from you. Any last words or insights for us?
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do with U.S. Construction Zone. Love to be part of it. Anything I can do to help out with. If there's anything I can do to help mentor with people looking at process and procedures and trying to build their company. I'm going to go meet with Ben Newman. He's a high performance coach for Alabama and a couple really big companies. And he talks about this thing called the burn. And I really am kind of excited about that in my future. What I'm looking at is finding what drives me every single day to really get out of bed, really just put in as much effort as I can. So hopefully I can share some of that information once I'm done with that. But
awesome. Thank you. We appreciate it. Well, we'll definitely see you in U.S. Construction Zone. And I can't thank you enough for being willing to mentor, because that's the kind of people I've been trying to get, is just those people who are willing to reach their hand out and say, hey, how can I help? And just like we've been talking about this whole podcast, you get what you give in life. And I just would love to have this business surrounded with people like you and us, just saying, hey, how can we get to the next level? How can I help you with, I have this skill. I know that I don't have the rest of them. So let me try to grab those. Dang it. Why don't we just do that?
There's a lot of power in, collective wisdom.
Yeah.
And that collective wisdom's really, if you can share that, I think there's a lot of value there for everyone. And everyone at different stages can provide value.
Yeah.
Just because you didn't accomplish, one thing, you have a certain expertise because of the experience you went through. So I think it's huge. But thank you guys. I appreciate it. It's been awesome. Looking forward to talking to you again.
All right. Thanks a lot, Sunny.
Bye,
guys.
Bye-bye.
Conversation to have with Sunny. I feel like he has so much more wisdom to share with us.
Yeah, I agree.
And just a leader, whether or not he considers himself that or not, I think he understands so much about business from his successes, but also his failures. And I think that was what makes him so wise, is that he understands that there's no shame in failure, that it's more of, there's a learning opportunity in every experience.
Yeah, it's really cool, because I think the best leaders are those ones that are humble, right? And so if you don't consider yourself a great leader, it's because it's a work in progress. And he's definitely that. Like, he's just got back from a conference. He's always talking to me about what books he's reading and what podcasts he's listening to. And I'm like taking notes, because I'm not doing all those things. And so I feel like that is a great leader, in that you don't consider yourself a finished product yet. And I consider myself a friend and someone who I will reach out to if I have a problem. And I think that's great for him to have that attractive quality, where people say, hey, I'll ask Sunny what he would do in this situation. And I'm grateful that he's willing to take a look at the platform, U.S. Construction Zone, and be part of it.
Yeah.
And like he said in the podcast, to be a mentor and to be helpful. And he feels like he's in a spot now where he can do that. And that's awesome. That's all we're looking for.
Yeah. A lot to learn from him.
Yep. Well, thanks again for listening to In the Zone. Val, what's our podcast called?
In the Zone.
Okay, you got it. Until next time, we will see you again with another great guest. We have several coming up that I'm really excited about. But thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to In the Zone with Jeremy and Valerie Owens. Be sure to subscribe to In the Zone and stay in the know with the best minds in the construction industry. To nominate an innovator or change maker in the construction industry, connect with your management peers, and stay up to date with construction industry news, be sure to visit usconstructionzone.com.